You've Made Yourself the System. The Ego Payoff of Control by Leslie Rahansi. Leaders, have you ever had that moment where you pause, look around, and realize it's all on me? You're involved in everything, every decision, every escalation, every aspect of the work from strategy to execution. You send late-night messages that start with, "Hey, quick question." You carry the weight, you solve the problems, and you keep the whole machine running. But if you listen closely, underneath what can start to feel like a kind of performative martyrdom, you might notice a sense of pride in being the one who holds it all together, the one who's central, necessary, irreplaceable. We don't typically acknowledge this uncomfortable fact. Hell, we're often not even aware that it's what's driving us. Others might look at us and think, wow, that's commitment. But from the inside, it's something deeper. Think about it. If it's truly all on you, then either the system is broken, or you've made yourself the system. It feels like leadership, but. So many of the leaders I coach tell me they haven't been able to get away for a real break. There's always something too important, too fragile, or too dependent on them. The one that really stays with me was a woman who hadn't taken a proper vacation in 9 years. Her team leaned on her constantly, and she was the implicit leader of her peer group, and her actual leader repeatedly rewarded her for being indispensable. 9 years without a real break. In one session, after walking through yet another week of being pulled into everything, I asked her, "What do you get out of being needed like this?" She paused for a long time before answering, and then she said, "I know that I matter." Ooh, right in the feels. It took real courage to say that out loud, to see how something in her was driving her behavior and even her identity. The secret payoff. When you set up the system so that everything must run through you, you receive constant reinforcement as the one who people turn to, the one who knows what's going on, and the one who can fix things when they break. That creates a powerful internal reward that goes far beyond external validation. Behavioral psychology says that we repeat behaviors that are rewarded, especially when the reward is tied to how we see ourselves. That feeling of being relevant, necessary, and relied upon isn't trivial. It anchors identity. So when a leader says, "I need to delegate more," but then doesn't follow through, I don't assume that it's a skill gap. I get curious and invite them to get curious along with me about the payoff they haven't named yet. More often than not, that payoff is about keeping them at the center of a system that needs them to function and reinforcing the belief that they need to stay at the center to remain relevant. It's as if they believe they won't matter if they're not involved in every decision and every thread, which helps to explain why letting go feels risky and why control feels so important to them. Control disguised as commitment. Now that we're digging deep, here's another layer that's even harder to see. Carrying everything is about control. If work runs through you, you can see it, shape it, and intervene before it goes sideways. That reduces uncertainty, which matters more than most of us are willing to admit. And the pattern reinforces and amplifies itself over time. You stay involved to reduce risk, and your team stays dependent because you're involved, and you feel even more responsible because they depend on you. Eventually, this stops being a leadership approach and becomes a closed system in the exact shape of you, with everything designed to run through you. The ego trap. There's a sharper edge to this that's worth naming. Believing that it's all up to you can carry a subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, form of egocentricity. It's not just that you believe it, it's that you've positioned yourself as the center through which everything has to move. Maybe it wasn't intentional, and it may not look like arrogance in the obvious sense, but there's a deeply held belief that things won't function without you at the center. It sounds responsible and committed, but when leaders place themselves at the center of every outcome and hold that belief, even unconsciously, it will crowd out the capability of others. There's little room for different approaches or shared ownership. Over time, it sends a message to the team that says, "I've got this," which people eventually hear as, "and that's because I think you don't." It's not your intention, of course, but that's the impact nonetheless. One of the reasons this pattern is so hard to shift is because it's tied to how leaders see their relevance, their role, their value, and their responsibility. Stand down hero. Many leaders built their careers on being the person who steps in and saves the day because they see problems faster than others, connect the dots, and move things forward. That ability is often rewarded early and often. Then they get promoted and the rules change. At more senior levels, the role is no longer to be the hero. The role is to build a team that doesn't need one. And that shift is far more difficult than it sounds because it requires us to let things wobble, to watch others struggle, and to resist stepping in when we can clearly see the answer. For a leader whose identity is built on being capable and reliable, that can feel like negligence rather than growth. So they keep stepping in, and over time, they find themselves carrying more than they can sustain. Hidden costs. This pattern doesn't just lead to burnout. When everything runs through you, your team stops thinking at the same level. It doesn't just feel like everything runs through you, it actually does. Decisions bottleneck, ownership becomes unclear, and frustration builds. You begin to feel like you're carrying people, while they begin to feel that they aren't trusted. There's also a structural limit that shows up over time. As your role becomes more complex, your capacity won't scale if you stay the central hub of everything. You don't just feel like a bottleneck, you become one, even though your intention is to support the system. Here's a marker for a high-performing leader. They can step away for a good stretch, say the length of a proper vacation, and the team still functions well and achieves their objectives. If performance drops because decisions stall or everything waits for you, you know the system is built around you. And at senior levels, that doesn't just create strain. It caps your career trajectory because leaders who can't step out without things slowing down or collapsing are difficult to move up. Some leaders don't fully want to let go of this pattern because it serves something important. It reinforces identity, creates a sense of value, and offers a level of control that feels stabilizing. If that pattern were to change, a different question would emerge. If you're not the one holding everything together, then who are you as a leader? Shifting the role. Leaders who move through this don't suddenly disengage. They become more deliberate about where they show up and why. The work isn't just to take things off their plate, it's to redesign the system so it doesn't rely on them in the same way. And a powerful upside, when you step back in the right places, your people step forward. They make decisions, test ideas, and start to question the way we do it here, instead of waiting for your answer or permission. That's where capability actually grows, not in perfectly executed instructions, but in imperfect attempts that they own. If everything continues to run through you, your team adapts by bringing problems, not proposals, and waiting to be told rather than thinking it through. When you shift your role, you change that pattern and create space for judgment and challenge, and for different ways of doing things to emerge. They begin to ask themselves more precise questions like, what truly requires my involvement? Where am I stepping in out of habit rather than necessity? What am I preventing my team from learning? They also develop something that doesn't get talked about enough in leadership development: tolerance. Tolerance for ambiguity, for imperfect execution, and for outcomes that don't match exactly how they would have done it. Tolerance, what some might call grace, is what allows leadership to scale beyond the limits of one person. Your coaching challenge. Take a clear look at your current load, not just what you're carrying, but how it got there. Approach this as an intentional practice, not a quick reflection. Step 1, map your current load. Write down the key decisions, problems, and responsibilities that regularly flow through you. Step 2, identify the pattern. For each item, ask yourself, where does this genuinely require my involvement? Where am I stepping in because it feels uncomfortable not to? What do I get emotionally from being the one who carries this? Step 3, name the payoff. Be honest here. What does being needed give you? Relevance, control, certainty, recognition? If you don't name it, you can't shift it. Step 4, experiment with pulling back. Choose 1 or 2 areas where you can intentionally step back by about 10%. Be specific about what you will stop doing, delay, or redirect. Step 5. Build tolerance. As you step back, notice what shows up. Discomfort, anxiety, the urge to jump back in. Don't fix it immediately. Stay with it. This is where the real work is. And step 6. Observe the system. Watch what happens when you're not in the middle. Do others step forward? Do things wobble? Do new ideas emerge? This is data, not a verdict. The goal of this practice isn't perfection, it's awareness and experimentation. What you notice here will tell you more about your leadership than any framework ever will. And if you want to make some leadership shifts in a practical, grounded way, reach out for a free exploratory executive coaching conversation at leslierahansi.com. Have a smooth day.